Hi, welcome. I'm Susan B Lochocki, running for President of the United States as a write-in, and I am making this extra video about the women's suffrage movement in the United States for those who don't have time to follow all the different details of it. I found this article and I think it covers everything really well. So I'm going to read it for you and just to give you the final take on it. And I suppose this would also be a good one for children. If you have children, they can watch this and understand it. Maybe. Anyway, so let me get started. It is from the VCU Library's Social Welfare History Projects. So, women's suffrage, the movement. The beginning of the struggle for women's suffrage in the United States is actually traced to the Declaration of Sentiments, produced in 1848 at the first Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York, when a group of abolitionist activists, mostly women, but some men, gathered to discuss the issue of women's rights. Most of the delegates agreed American women were autonomous individuals who deserved their own political identities. We hold these truths to be self-evident, proclaimed the Declaration of Sentiments, that the delegates produced, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What this meant, among other things, was that they believed women should have the right to vote. During the 1850s, women's rights movement gathered steam, but lost momentum when the Civil War began. In the aftermath of the Civil War, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton found themselves increasingly at odds with many of their former reform allies. Many reformers wanted to focus on winning rights, including the right to vote, for newly emancipated African American men. Their efforts led to the passing of the 14th and the 15th Amendments to the Constitution. Anthony and Stanton were against these amendments because they included the word male. They believed that with the word male written in these amendments, it would be even harder for women to obtain the right to vote. So, Anthony and Stanton began to concentrate exclusively on women's rights. Susan B. Anthony had become a brilliant organizer and political strategist, and she showed a tireless devotion to the cause. In 1868, she and Stanton started publishing a newspaper for the women's rights revolution. The paper championed women's suffrage, equal pay for equal work, women's education, the rights of working women, and to open the new occupation and the opening of new occupations for women, as well as liberalization of divorce laws. In May of 1869, Anthony and Stanton formed the National Women's Suffrage Association. This organization would focus on securing a federal woman suffrage amendment, as well as working on key state campaigns for the vote. Anthony served as a member of the executive committee and later as vice president, while Stanton was president. Others argued that it was unfair to endanger black enfranchisement by tying it to the markedly less popular campaign for female suffrage. The pro-15th Amendment faction formed a group called the American Women's Suffrage Association and fought for the franchise on a state-by-state basis. In 1872, suffragists brought a series of court challenges designed to test whether voting was a privilege or was a privilege of U.S. citizenship, now belonging to women by virtue of the recently adopted 14th Amendment. One such challenge grew out of a criminal prosecution of Susan B. Anthony for illegally voting in the 1872 election, the first case to make its way to the Supreme Court. However, was Minor versus Happersett in 1875. In Minor, a unanimous court rejected the argument that either the privileges and immunities cause or the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment extended the vote to women. Following Minor, suffragists turned their attention from the courts to the states and to Congress. In 1878, a constitutional amendment was proposed that provided the right of citizens to vote shall not be abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. This same amendment would be introduced in every session of Congress for the next 41 years. In 1890, the National Women's Suffrage Association and the American Women's Suffrage Association merged to form the National American Women's Suffrage Association. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was the organizer's first president. By then, the suffragists' approach had changed. Instead of arguing that women deserved the same rights and responsibilities as men because women and men were created equal, the new generation of activists argued that women deserved the right to vote because they were different from men. They could make their own domesticities into a political virtue, using the franchise to create a purer, more moral, maternal commonwealth. This argument served many political agendas. Temperance advocates for insistence wanted women to have the vote because they thought it would mobilize an enormous voting bloc on behalf of their cause. And many middle-class white people were swayed once again by the argument that the enfranchisement of white women would ensure immediate and durable white supremacy honestly attained. In July 1890, the territory of Wyoming, which allowed women to vote, was admitted into the state. Wyoming became the first state with women's suffrage. By 1900, Utah, Colorado, and Idaho joined Wyoming in allowing women to vote. In 1912, Theodore Roosevelt's Progressive Bull Moose Party became the first national political party to have a plank supporting women's suffrage. The tide was beginning to turn. In May 1919, the necessary 2/3 vote in favor of women's suffrage amendment was finally mustered in Congress, and the proposed amendment was sent to the states for ratification. By July 1920, that was 100 years ago, this past July, with a number of primarily southern states adamantly opposed to the amendment, it all came down to Tennessee. It appeared that the amendment might fail by one vote in the Tennessee House, but 24-year-old Harry Burns surprised observers by casting the deciding vote for ratification. At the time of his vote, Burns had in his pocket a letter he had received from his mother urging him, "Don't forget to be a good boy and vote for suffrage." Women had finally won the right to vote. There we go. And then that happened in August, actually. That vote was on the 18th. And then it became official on the 26th of August. So there we go. That is the story. If you want to go on, there are further readings. I guess you can find this article online if you want. Who is it by? They're not giving me a name. No, they're not giving me a name. Okay, so there we go. I liked the article, so I thought I would share it with you. I hope that helps you to understand the steps that were taken for women to have the right to vote. So again, I'm still celebrating our 100-year anniversary year of women's rights to vote. I wish you all a nice day wherever you are. Bye.